Hey everybody, this is episode 6 of the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the rising popularity in long-range precision shooting, so stick around.
Mission 3, 2, 1. This is the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action Podcast.
We believe there's no defensive situation so bad that your lack of training can't make it worse. We're on a mission to cut the crap in the firearms industry and bring you topics and discussions that are designed to make you a more informed and effective gunfighter. If it has to do with alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and everything else, we're going to talk about it. Guys, gals, and submarine racers, here are your hosts, Jay Eisenecke and Mike Garza.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining us for episode 6 of the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action Podcast. My name is Jay Eisenecke, and with me is my favorite co-host, Mike Garza. Mike, how are you?
What's up, homie cheeses?
Homie cheeses. Wow.
Yeah.
Is that as good as it gets? Homie
I guess,
cheeses?
I don't know.
Okay, all right.
It's late. We're on lockdown. Governor's gotten under my skin.
Yeah, well, it's the state of the world, I guess, as it is right now. But it's another sunny Sunday, so we'll be all right. It's all right.
Right.
Hey, so I was going through some stuff here, and I was thinking of the last podcast that we did where we were talking about the differences between trespass, burglary, and robbery. And we got talking about this situation that happened in Kentucky. Now, this happened earlier in May. So maybe I'm going to say it was like the first week in May of this year. And it was what they are calling a botched police raid. And it was a woman who was an EMT in Kentucky who got killed in a raid in her apartment. And so it was one of these situations where the interesting details of this whole thing is that they were asleep in their house, minding their own business, obviously, and the door gets kicked in. People come in. Her husband, who it's legal for him to carry a firearm. He has a CCW. He's, perfectly within his right to have guns in his house and to carry them and all those types of things. They break into his house and, like most people, have, a gun either by their bed or somewhere nearby. They break in. They both believe that they're being burglarized, or in this case, going to be robbed by somebody. He grabs his gun and he starts firing, and he hits one of the people that's come in. And in response, they just open fire into the house. And unfortunately, the lady who was the EMT, her name is Breonna Taylor, she got shot. And I take it back. It's actually her boyfriend, not her husband. But she gets shot and killed in her house by these 3 officers. And so it goes into the situation is that, they truly felt that they were, somebody was breaking in their house with intent, and, it was a robbery. And so he goes to defend himself. So kind of one of those things that, we were talking about is here's a real life situation. And so what's kind of your take on that thing, Mike?
Yeah, so this one's a pretty hard one to swallow, right? A hard pill to swallow. I can speak directly to this, and I think you as well when we were on warrant teams. But the biggest thing is that you, as a cop, right, and you do these high risk warrants, you got to do your homework, or you got to have somebody that really knows their stuff. We had several people on the team that did this. They collected intel, and 3 of them sucked and one of them was awesome. So it was funny because when we would get intel from the 3 that sucked, we would approach it like it was horrible. When we got the one intel from the one lady that did her job very, very well, we could count on it to a T. I mean, everything was perfect. Innocent homeowner that's just sitting there sleeping, and then the door gets broken down. You're not going to hear police, we have a warrant. You're not going to hear any of that. You're going to be asleep. Then you're going to hear the door crash, and then I would pick up my long rifle because that's what I keep on my bedside, and you're going to get it, whoever it is at the door. I know because I'm an innocent. I don't do drugs. I don't deal drugs. I don't rob houses. I don't trespass. I know who I am, right? So why would the cops be breaking down my door, right? There is no reason for it. So the only thing I can assume is when that door comes crashing down, and I'll give myself a little bit of props here, you're going to have a hard time crashing my door down because you're not going to get to it at the beginning. And then my dog's going to get to you first, and then I'm going to have time to react. And I kid you not, I'm like,
right. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mike, but I think your point is really good there, is that your mindset is that I'm with you, is that there is no reason that the cop should ever be breaking down the door of my house. It just doesn't make any, I'm not even thinking that would ever be something that would ever happen. So if they're the same way, and she obviously, and it said that they had they have no record, they have no prior history of any of that type of stuff. And she's an EMT. I mean, obviously she's in the first responder realm. She would never think that. And
she's already gone through a background check. She's clean as a whistle, Right. Again, there should be no bells and whistles for her or her boyfriend, right? That any of this would ever happen to them unless somebody's seriously botched up, right?
Right. And so then when somebody does break in, that's the only thing that you're going to be thinking is somebody is forcing their way into my house with the intent to attack me, to do whatever. Yep. And, they can say, and now here's the thing, is that what some of the details on it is that the investigation by the police was centered around what they're calling in air quotes here again, because, we're not doing video. So air quotes, trap house that was more than 10 miles from where her apartment was.
Right.
And that when the warrant got approved, it was approved as a no-knock search warrant. So essentially what that means is they have no obligation to identify themselves. They can just bust in and go. And that's what ultimately happened here. Now supposedly they're claiming that they did knock and announce that they're
of course.
They're saying they did it, announcing that they're the police, and the her boyfriend who survived, he's saying, that's not what happened. We didn't even hear any of that. So, you get, it's a he said, she said type of thing, but still they're given a no-knock warrant, and more than likely that's probably what happened. And she gets shot 8 times and dies. And now the problem is that he got arrested. So her boyfriend, who was the guy that pulls his gun, who's there to protect her, this guy named Kenneth Walker, he got arrested and charged with assault and attempted murder on a police officer. Right. So, it's just one of those situations where it goes in and you say, well, if it's, I don't know if there's a clearer case for where a person would say, yeah, this is to me was a robbery. And that would be, there's no doubt if you took 3, because here was the thing, right? A couple of the other details is they were plain clothes, which means more than likely they just had body armor either on top of or underneath, maybe a raid shirt that says police on the back, maybe, or it may just be a plate carrier over a shirt. And so they're plain clothes, no uniform. Maybe they got a badge clipped on their belt, or maybe they got it on a chain around their neck. They came in unmarked cars. So there was nothing that would lead anybody around there. So if you take the situation and these 3 guys are not police officers and they broke into the house, would it be a justified shooting of the guy who got arrested? Would he have been justified in that case if you take the whole situation of it's the police that busted into the house?
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about the totality of the circumstances. This is an exact prime example. This is everything gone wrong. But again, hindsight is 2020, right? So allegedly you heard or didn't hear the cops announcing themselves at the door, which again, with a no knock warrant, you don't have to. So I'm going to side with this guy and be like, no, why would they knock, right? This is what atypical personalities live for. This type of no knock, guns blazing, guns coming in, guns, it's going to be fast. This is not a slow, methodical surge through a building. This is going to be a fast entry and, secure everything. And let me tell you, these cops were lucky because, again, had it been botched at my place or your place or any one of the people that we associate with, they would have been met with overpowering gunfire, because that's the way I play. If I'm going out, if you're coming with me, that's just the way it is. That's the way I'm set up. And again, it's not because I'm looking to shoot warrants that are going on. It's because I'm thinking, okay, well, someone's serious. They're breaking into my house, and I'm a law-abiding citizen. Why would I think that the cops are coming to my house? The bad guy's coming, and I'm here to play too. So, yeah, this is bad all the way around. To me, it sounds like they didn't do their homework. They shotgunned it, and now they should pay the price, and those charges need to be dropped from that man. He should be praised for trying to protect his loved one. And really, that's the stink of it. She's dead, and he's alive, and that's just wrong. She wasn't the aggressor. If you want to call it that, he was, right.
Right. Yeah. He was the one that would have engaged him, and she's just trying to get out of the way. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And he did hit one of the officers. I think he hit the sergeant that came through there. And so he got some shots off, hit somebody. Obviously the guy probably went down. And then according to this, it's shots were blind. And again, air quotes, shots were blindly fired by the officers all throughout her house. So, obviously they got hit. That's kind of what they're doing. I imagine if they're sleeping, it's probably in the middle of the night, so it's dark.
Right.
So all the things that could possibly be, stacked against this situation certainly were. So it's just, again, this is one of those things. If you just took out when we're saying, hey, what's the difference between a trespass and a burglary and a robbery, is clearly if you take out the situation where they're the police, this would have been one of those situations. Certainly that would have fallen into the category of robbery, they had the intent, they came in, they had guns, all that type of stuff. They were going to separate. The guy believes that they were going to do harm to him.
And before someone says, oh, this doesn't happen, right? Baloney. There are several cases where armed men break into a home because they're specifically after a certain thing, and the homeowner defends himself or doesn't defend himself with a firearm. So, well,
yeah, we even brought up, I think it was like on the first or the second episode where we talked about that the Asian lady who defended her home, had brought all of her restaurant stuff at her house, and she, so you're going to break in. That's what you're thinking. There's no reason other than that, and
that's one of the reasons why I don't think maybe we did one, but we avoided that like the plague, because it doesn't justify anything. There is no, like, what kind of drugs was she selling that was so horrific that's what needed to happen? Was she within the cartel? Did she have links to, crime that was so hideous that they were, I don't know, injecting little kids with it? No, none of that. It was, they were buying, the hit was cocaine or weed or meth,
Right. And so here's the detail, right? Is that, speaking of that, is you're going, that's like Tennessee versus Garner, right? If you're going to, what justifies you to be able to shoot somebody in the back, right? So this is the same thing, is that you're looking at this going, well, what would justify a no-knock warrant on an apartment? And this is what they said, is that her address was listed, but it was supposed to be on another location 10 miles away, but it was based on the police belief that a drug suspect had used her home to receive mail, keep drugs, or stash money.
Right.
And that the warrant also states that a car registered to her was seen parked on several occasions in front of a, air quotes, drug house known to the suspect, which is the suspect that wasn't even there, wasn't even in the home that they were supposed to go to. Yep. So again, it looks to you, and I'm not armchair quarterbacking this at all, but I'm just, here it is do we really need a no-knock? Was this the level that they needed to go into this house for something where maybe they suspected somebody was shipping it to their mailbox or something like that? I don't know.
Well, and here's more fuel to the fire, right? So if you do your due diligence, like we used to do, when you run the checks on people, hey, look at page 2, the guy is a CCW holder. Okay, well, the last time I checked, bad guys don't go get their CCW permit so they can carry legally, right? So that should have sent red flags up in this whole jacket. They should have said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Let's look at this a little harder.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big part of it when you get those warrants, you go out and do those, is that you're looking through all the information, making sure it makes sense. And, when you get stuff that's 2 weeks old and it says they're staying at a hotel, I mean, what's the likelihood that the room that you're going to, in these cases, what's the likelihood that the room you're going to, that person is still there? And I know on all the ones that I ever went to, when we went to the hotel rooms, they were never there. And they hadn't been there. They were there for one night, maybe two. And, if this stuff is, it's, anyway, we're just going down. I just think it's a good example, like I said, of what people are expecting to be that threshold to where you need to use deadly force sometimes to be able to protect yourself. So, but at any rate.
And in all fairness to the cops, maybe it wasn't their intel. Maybe they were just the executioners, not meaning like executioner with an axe, but they were just executing the warrant, and they had gotten the intel from someone else, which I would never do that anyways, but maybe that's the way their office operates. And then, so, again, we don't have all the facts, and that's really the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's just, it certainly is an unfortunate situation, but any rate, I just thought we'd bring that one up because we had just talked about that in the last episode about something of that nature, and so I thought it was kind of valuable to kind of revisit it. But not to kind of, I guess, to kind of shift some gears to stuff that maybe is a little bit more fun to talk about. Is recently I went and competed in my second VMBAR and VMSAR match. Now, what those are is it's vintage military bolt-action rifles and vintage military semi-automatic rifles. So the fun thing about this is the group of people that compete here locally, they really get into this stuff. And so you get points for certain things. And they really go down the World War II era to Korea to Vietnam is kind of the era for the rifles. So the rifles and handguns. And they get into it where you get points depending on how authentic your attire is.
Wow.
Yeah. So these guys come out, and one of the guys was dressed up as a SS colonel, and he had all the stuff. I mean, he was, and a lot of these guys spend a lot of bucks, and some of them, they go in and they, criticize somebody if they don't have the right buckle or whatever. And,
as an SS colonel?
I know. Yeah. I was like, ooh, I'm surprised. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, whatever, man. But, whatever you want to do. But they come in and they do all that stuff and that's their thing, right? Is they want to do the dress up and do all the shooting and all that kind of stuff. And, so it really is kind of fun. And then there's me that shows up, and I'm just like, hey, show up in t-shirt and jeans, go, what's up? And so these guys
you
are
could have at least done the cargo pants. Come on, man.
No. It was no cargo pants. And so needless to say, I did not get any points for my uniform. Because I didn't get any of that, but still the whole point of this was to be able to use, it had to be bone stock, bolt action rifles or semi-automatic rifles. it's at different ranges. So you go through and you have, close range, maybe 75 to 100 yards. And then you got 200 yards, then 300, 500, 700, something like that. And so you're doing this with iron sights, unless you're doing competing on the sniper side where they're allowed to use whatever the scope is that was on it, vintage when it was issued. And then those guys, they shoot a little bit, they're allowed to use their scopes because that's what came with it. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a really good time. One of the stages, you had to throw a grenade into a barrel, and they fire the old 1911, and these guys are all rifle guys, so it was fun to watch them miss from like 15 yards on the steel, and they had to fire 10 shots, and maybe you only heard one ding. But that's okay. They wanted to get to the rifle stuff. They just wanted to get it over with. But still a good time. And now, have you ever done that, Mike? I know you've done some of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So a good buddy of mine, Paul, dragged me into it a while ago. He's like, "Hey, let's go shoot this." I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't have a rifle, and I don't." He's like, "I don't care. I'll supply everything." I'm like, "All right, let's go." So we get out there and we're just, he sets me up, we're shooting, and I use the scope. It's a 4x scope, and it's a CMP match. It's a civilian marksmanship program. A little plug to them. And it was a lot of fun. I totally got hooked. So it was just nice to get behind the rifle. And of course, these are not modern rifles. So the steel butt plate helps great on your collarbone.
Sure.
As you're shooting at 300 yards and 600 yards, and you're only allowed to use like a 4-power, I think, scope. I don't know. I'd have to read the rules, which I didn't, because Paul just said, "Here, take this and shoot it."
So he made sure you were set up when you got there. Then, yeah.
Yeah. So it was cool. And for the record, I outshot Paul on that day. So
really, wow.
Yeah. And then we tried it again. I brought my buddies in from Texas, Jason and I don't know my other buddy's name. We'll have to edit that out. Danny. I don't know why I drew a blank there. Sorry,
there ain't
Danny.
no way I'm editing. There's no way I'm editing that out.
I really do love you, Danny. But yeah, Danny and Jason from Texas, and we all ended up. This is right before the COVID scare, So we all were out there shooting, and it was really interesting to. So you really do have to know your partner, and Paul is way chill, and I'm pretty chill too. Like, I don't really care, but it was neat to see the different team dynamics on how it is. Now I'm blind as a bat. I wear glasses, 4 eyes and the whole 9 yards. So it's hard to look through those old scopes and try and get a good sight picture and get everything blended in. And then you're handing off the same rifle to your partner, so he's got to get it set up, and you only have so much time. You have to get so many shots off. It was a lot of fun. I was impressed. And just like you, they had people that were in era timepieces. We didn't get any points for that. We just got points for hits, actual hits. So
right, we
did good. And to give props where props are due, Jason and Danny, they got third place in their first ever match for the vintage sniper. So
when you guys were doing that, what kind of was it? So it was vintage military stuff too, or what kind of rifles? I got to assume that there was an M1 there, right?
Yeah, they had. So they had different. You could, as long as it was during that era, you could swap out, like a Mauser or chambered in, 308 or 30-06 or whatever. Like, it didn't matter as long as the optic was only a 4-power and it was from back in that time period. And then the Springfield rifle or a Mauser or 7mm or whatever it was. And that's maybe one thing we'd have to do is bring in Paul to the show, and he can educate us, because I'm horrible at vintage stuff. Like, I know the new stuff, but I don't know the old stuff. But just the simple fact that you were able to get in there with teams, and one guy was your spotter, and you could really had to work with each other to get it going. So it was a lot of fun. I was duly impressed.
So now I'm thinking, when I was out there shooting, they were using these, they were the Mausers. I had to look before this. Well, that's what I was typing feverishly over here was the 1941 Swedish Mauser sniper rifle.
Right.
And it had a scope on it, and that was the bolt action one that was in the VMBAR class. And so I think that thing had like a tube on the scope that was maybe half the size of a toilet paper roll, maybe.
Yep.
I mean, it was pretty small. So I can imagine if you're visually challenged with glasses and everything else, that's got to be pretty tough.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was literally like looking through the bottom of a Coke bottle for me. It's like I couldn't see shit. but it was, like I said, it was a blast,
Yeah, and so that's pretty much what I got to shoot was the Swedish Mausers, and then the Russian the Nagants. And they had a couple of the guys had the M1s, which, you just have to have that because, and I just, every time somebody was shooting one, I kind of made my way over there just so I could hear the bing every time, clip. I mean, it's just, yeah. Hey, oh, wait, that's right. You can say that.
That's good. That's right. Yeah, these you had to have a bolt. So it couldn't have been the M1s because they're semis. But the physical bolt throwovers, and like I said, we'd have to bring in Paul, and he would educate us on our lack of knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. So, and it seems like to me, and I don't know, I follow whether it's on Instagram or it's Facebook or whatever it might be, is that, obviously everything is somewhat related to guns and all the other strange interests that I have, but it seems like more and more that the long-range precision shooting seems to be growing in popularity. And I see, the Vortex logos on the back of pickup trucks all over. I mean, I know there's a lot of hunters, and they, it's good glass and all that kind of stuff, but it just seems like more and more people are doing it. Even at the range here, is that you'd think that everybody's going to be on the handgun side of things, but there's more and more people are packing up the longer ranges to do that. Is that kind of what you're seeing, or is that just I don't know what I'm talking about?
No, yeah, that's about right. So what's going on is Ruger has really made it affordable now. Like if you really wanted to compete in distance stuff, you either went to F class, which is like crazy competition, or you did the more tactical style, modern day, shoot and move style distance shooting. And so Ruger, when they came out with their precision rifle series, I mean, it just took off like wildfire. And then you get that Creedmoor round in the mix, that 6.5 in there, and it's such a fast round. So it's literally a laser beam. So it handles error very well. So you're out there at 1,000 yards as a new shooter banging steel. It feels really good, right? Now, when you get down to the nitty gritty of it and you're shooting, sub-MOA at 500, you really do have to have your skills honed in. But
okay. Now hold on a second here.
I jumped the gun.
No. You just threw a term out there.
Put the terms out there.
Yeah. So I got we're going to walk back just a second. So sub-MOA. For those that don't know what that means, give a real quick rundown of what sub-MOA would mean.
So if you don't like math, this is not going to be the explanation that you want to hear. So you can't, because the bullet is falling, right? So contrary to what people believe, the barrel is not turned upwards, right? So that it shoots, like if you drop a bullet and shoot a bullet and they're both perfectly level, the bullets will hit the ground at the exact same time, no matter how far that bullet's traveled out of the barrel, right? So your scope is tilted down a little bit. So now you're talking about arcs and angles. So minute of angle is exactly that. So at 100 yards, right, your round should be able to land within 1 inch, right? It's 1 minute of angle when you do all the math, right? So at 200 yards, you should be at 2 inches low. And so you want to stay inside of that minute of angle. So hypothetically speaking, at 100 yards, you should be able to land all your rounds inside of that inch.
So then if I'm at 800 yards, then what you're saying is that sub-MOA would mean I would be within 8 inches
correct
of the center of the target.
Correct.
Ah, okay. Now I know that there's a lot of those people that are talking about that and what is, what is acceptable, and I don't know any other way to call it, but the swing and dick contest that everybody has out there about, how accurate they are at distance. So what is it going to be the caliber? Is it going to be, and I imagine there's a million things, because that's not my deal outside of hunting. I don't, I don't get into this stuff, so I don't know at all this, how important it is, but I imagine that the weight of the bullet, the caliber, and all those things are going to play a role into getting into that sub-MOA then.
Yeah. So, and essentially that's what you end up chasing, right? And there's multiple ways to do that chasing, right? Reloading, which I'm sure we'll get into, and stuff like that. Barrel harmonics. And I mean, there's literally a million things. You trim your brass, you touch your brass this way, you only tumble it so many times. There is just a myriad of things that you try and chase down for those things, along with the type of glass that you shoot, how you bed your barrel into your stock. I mean, it's just crazy. It gets crazy. Whether you preload your scope onto the rings, the rail of your rifle. I mean, it just goes on and on. And then, of course, with the internet, you get all of the different opinions as well of everybody. Oh, I've done it this way, I've done it that way. The funniest thing I've ever seen was we get on the range, I'm shooting at 300 yards, and these guys are like, oh yeah, we shoot at 300 yards all the time. I could hit a golf ball at 300 yards. Okay. If you've ever tried to shoot a golf ball at 300 yards, you will immediately understand that is A, extremely difficult to see, and B, it is extremely hard to hit. So, because if we go back to the minute of angle, right, that golf ball doesn't change size at 300 yards. It still stays relatively small. So, of course, we're out there at Ben Avery shooting, and these guys couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, And I was out there with my new rifle, my Remington 700 back at the time, and I was shooting subsonic rounds out at 300 yards. And at that point, I'm pretty losing accuracy, because that round is much, much slower. It's below the sound barrier. If we remember, I think we brought that out there when we were shooting out at your club out there that one time. And it was, it's just funny. You see the arc you literally see the bullet flying, and you see the arc, and it looks like a rainbow. It's just falling so fast.
Right. So hitting a golf ball at 300 yards, I sometimes when you hear people say stuff, it's like, do you actually hear what you're saying? I mean, right. I don't even know how you see, like you said, to your point, how do you even see a golf ball at, and it takes me back to the movie SWAT with
the aces and
right. Yeah. And they're out there shooting that thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe not. Maybe you can see it, but they're shooting playing cards up there and taking them out in the left corner of the one card on, 9 of spades and whatever. So I just, sometimes I don't think people, and maybe that's what people do just to see if you're gullible enough and how much more stuff they can tell you that's a bunch of BS, or if they're just doing it to see whether you know what you're doing. But do you find, because one of the things that, the firearms industry is a weird group of people, and it's kind of surprising to me, is that for as much as everybody talks about how they want to be pro Second Amendment, they certainly make it difficult for people that are new to shooting to feel comfortable coming into it. And if they go out and they buy the wrong gun, or they buy, that isn't a cool version, and they only buy what they can afford. Hey, if all you can afford is a 45 caliber high point, then that's what you're going to have. And I was trying to think of the recent string in some chat about people bringing stuff to to the range and what they're shooting and all that kind of stuff. And it's like we don't encourage, because I mean, let's face it, right now with the COVID thing and all that stuff happening is, thank you very much. They sold a lot of guns. They sold a lot of ammo, and we have a ton more new people that probably
Idiots?
before were. Yeah, well,
my bad. I mean, new people. Go ahead.
Right, but they don't know, and
Right.
so because they don't know, it is our responsibility, I think, to try to help those people as much as we can, is to understand about gun ownership and stuff, and instead, people, because they don't make the right buying decision, or they don't buy the right holster, or they don't buy this. I remember what it was, is I saw a post where they had a sign up at Sportsman's Warehouse where it had to explain that the bullets were for reloading. They weren't ammunition.
Yes.
And it had to educate somebody, because somebody obviously was a new gun owner, and they went in to go get bullets, and get the guy behind the counter, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bash the guys behind the counter, just like the people that buy the bullets, is, try to be a little helpful instead of being, the dude that thinks he knows everything behind the gun counter at Sportsman's Warehouse. So, instead of asking what they wanted, he just said, yeah, the bullets are over there. And the guy that doesn't really know anything goes over and buys a box of bullets. He gets home and notices that it's just bullets. It's not ammunition. So, but what are we doing to get those people to understand what things are? And they need to, if they don't understand, are they going to the right training classes, and are the instructors that do CCWs asking the right question to make sure that people, maybe they should have gone to a gun familiarization course before they took their CCW course.
Right.
It's just stuff like that. So what are we doing to make sure that these people feel comfortable? Because all the comments was bashing these people that didn't know, instead of saying, hey, what are we doing to try to make sure these people are educated, they don't hurt themselves, they don't hurt their family members, and they sure as heck don't hurt me.
Right.
So, so I guess the roundabout point to this, I guess, and question that I had was, do you find that in the long range precision shooting community, is that it's inviting, or do they just eat their own?
So the majority of the folks I went to my first PRS match, I don't know, it was like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago now. Now I've shot ARs, I've shot long guns, on patrol and stuff like that. I never really got behind a long gun in that kind of a competition until that match. I mean, I had practiced a little bit of it, but for the most part, everyone there they understood guns. They understood the safety aspect. For the most part, everyone was safety conscious. There was a couple of, rednecks or whatever you want to call them, hillbillies, that were like a little loose in their actions. But, like any other event that we go to, the flags were on, and all that kind of stuff. Every now and then somebody would falter at that, but we wouldn't yell at them because, the gun was downrange and everything. But for the most part, I would say 99.9% of everyone there was there to help you. I mean, they were either in the same shoes you were, either the match before or the match after. And then, and it was incredible. I mean, oh, you need a mag? Here's a mag. Oh, you need an extra round? Here's an extra round. And then, so for the majority of it, like we called it a competition, but we were just all there to learn. And so even, you're not supposed to like walk people into target, but when you get your groups together, you realize that we're just there for fun. And then we talked to each other. We talked across the shots and, oh, hey, yeah, you're like way off. I think your scope dope is wrong. And that's the beauty about the PRS series, is that you have to change your knobs to make everything match. So that's where the difference between like a hunting rifle versus a tactical rifle, where you're actually moving turrets for elevation and windage and all that stuff. Or if you have a reticle, that's a Christmas tree reticle where it's really busy and you're doing Kentucky windage essentially. That's where you have to start to learn your rifle and really start to dial in your tactics per se. And that's what makes that PRS different.
So like on a hunting rifle, you're not going to be out there, adjusting windage and altitude on your scope. It's you zeroed it in, and that's what you go out and you just go off the dots that are on it and say, yeah, he's about 350 yards off, and I'm going to go
Right.
2 dots up or 3 dots up or whatever.
Right.
So you're not going to, you're not going to dial it in.
Yeah, and even like you're talking about like an old United States Marine Corps where it has the mil dots or anything on it. Even that is technically not a traditional hunting rifle. The traditional hunting rifle was crosshairs, and they meet in the middle. And if you're smart, that when the reticle gets bigger on the bottom, you can use that as a secondary aim point. But for the most part, you zeroed at 300 or 200, whatever you had. If you had a 300 Win Mag, you zeroed at 300, and now you knew you could hit that elk, way out there. But you had to know the distance. And then that's what, the whole point of it was, is you had to be inside that sweet spot. So you either had to crawl up to your animal or wait for the animal to, go away from you to get that 300-yard range. You had to move it. Nowadays with the scopes that are out there, you can adjust for distance. And that's what this is all about,
Right. And that's, and I guess that's the other thing is that, you were saying that earlier, is that the people don't necessarily, they already know guns and that type of stuff. So it's not really, you're not seeing then that the people that get into the precision rifle shooting stuff right now, those are more somewhat experienced. It's not like the first person that's going to go buy a gun is going to go out and get because that's a huge investment just to get the basic rig set up to even go out and shoot. So it's going to be somebody that's going to kind of know what they're doing then.
Yes and no. I did see a couple of brand new shooters. Like they literally pulled that Ruger Precision out of that box, and they, that's the beauty. Again, that 6.5 round is so lightning fast, and those Rugers are built really well that literally out of the box you zero it out, and then boom, you're at 500 yards plugging away at targets.
So is that Ruger? Then
we should be sponsored by Ruger. I plugged them so much. It's just not Ruger. It's other rifles too, Tikkas, and there's all kinds of stuff out there. But that Creedmoor round is really where everything has gone to now. And again, now you start getting into ballistics, right? I don't shoot the 6.5 round. I shoot the 300 Win Mag round because I don't want to just stop something. I want to put a bowling size hole into it, a bowling ball size hole into it, which is why I shoot the 300 Win Mag. But at 1,000 yards, I can stop your vehicle with my 300 Win Mag. If I give you a black tip.
And it sounds like that's what I hear the most of is the Creedmoor is where everybody's going, and that's because so I assume, not knowing much about the Creedmoor, then is it a lighter round than the 300 Win Mag?
Yeah, so it usually the fast ones are at like 140, 150 grain. So it can really get out there, and they zip out of that barrel. It's a barrel burner though, so you're going to be replacing your barrel much faster than any gun. But at the same time, it really flies. Those Hornady rounds are, they really did make it perfect out of the box. So you don't have to reload. That's like a whole nother expenditure that you don't have to take on. You can go buy these over the counter bullets or rounds, I guess I should say.
Hey, did you just go buy some bullets over at Sportsman's Warehouse?
Yeah. You get these rounds over the counter, and boom, you're in the game, right? So, and you're right, it is a monumental. When you're stepping into that, you're like, ugh, this hurts, right? But that's why I say for the majority of the time, these people have already been invested in guns for some way, shape, or form, and now they're looking to get into a precision style gun, and they don't have to chuck in $4,000, $5,000, which is normally what you would spend for a bedded gun with a scope, and it's perfect and it shoots money, right from the gunsmith. This is a factory produced rifle that is just shooting sub-MOA, no problem, at 500 yards, and you can do it. Anyone can do it.
And it seems like to me is what interests me in doing it more. And maybe it's just because I'm getting up there in age. I don't know. Not that I don't even think I'm getting that old, but we've done all the stuff with the ARs and all the tactical stuff with the rifles and patrol rifle and everything like that. And all that stuff is fun, and that's the shooting and moving and all that kind of stuff, and getting up and down and kneeling and everything else. But there's something to be said about the long range stuff where it really is a thinking man's game. You have to, it's a little slower pace, Not that, you can't be young and do it. It's just that, but you really have to think about where you're shooting, and you got to think about your breathing control and how you actually press the trigger. And then you have to do all the math, like you're saying. I mean, I see these guys some of them have the little calculator deals to calculate what they need to put into their rifle. And, to figure all this stuff out, it's just not like, hey, you go up there, take a look and go, yeah, it's this many yards, and, aim a little high or a little low and whatever, and fire. So it really is a different part of your game that you have to use in order to shoot the long range stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, you can get lost in your dope chart. So what'll happen is you'll come up to a stage and they're like, yeah, shoot these 6 targets. And you're like, oh, okay, no problem, 6 yard. Oh, by the way, these 6 targets are all 6 different ranges. And it's not just 100, 200 yards. It's 100 yards, 700 yards, 400 yards, 673, and 928. And you're like, what? Never mind, I'm just going to shoot. So you know,
Exactly.
You're just like, whatever. And so what'll happen is you start to change your distance, your turn, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, where am I at? Well, how many clicks am I at? Where am I? Am I on the second target? Am I on the third target? What was my third target? Was it 328? Was it 928? So yeah, it gets fun, because basically I equate it like this: patrol rifles, checkers; precision rifles, chess.
Yeah.
Basically
Okay.
that.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there's, like I said, I get it. And there's a lot of fun, and there's, I don't think anybody is so good with their patrol rifle, and that they can't, look to, they can't find something new to do with it and challenge themselves with it. But it's just it's a whole different approach. I mean, it's like going, handguns to a patrol rifle to that. I mean, it's very different in everything in your approach to it. And I think that's, I think what, I guess it's just the curiosity as to why all of a sudden it's gotten, I don't know, maybe it was, the Shooter movie with Mark Wahlberg and yeah.
And for the record, that 2-liter thing on your end doesn't work. FYI,
that doesn't work.
No.
Really?
No.
Does that whole suicide rig that they had that they had him on the boat where he was doing that with all the pulleys and stuff?
No comment.
Okay. I mean, I saw one once. It was on the ground. I didn't know what it was for, but yeah. I mean, and obviously the guys coming back from Afghanistan, and we hear of all the long range shots, and all of those things have maybe made it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more popular. So that's why it seems to, or maybe it is that the people that are coming back that are in it are prior military, and that's just a way that they still can feel like they're connected and hooked up to the experience. I guess I don't know, but it just does seem like it's way more popular now, growing quite a bit now than it has in the past.
Yeah, the dynamics of the group, it was all the way from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other. Women, girlfriends, wives. I mean, it was just crazy. It was all over the place. And it's funny because it really does put you in your age group. Let me just put it that way. So you don't just sit prone. You don't just stand. There's barricades that you have to lean on. You have to navigate. There's sometimes there's rules to a stage. Like, you can put your backpack on this barricade, but you can't put your left foot down. You have to have your left foot touching the barricade. So, or when you shoot off this barricade, you have to be only one hand, or you have to shoot offhand. So there's a lot of cool little things that they make you work through. So it's not going to be an easy shot. It's not going to be just a 200-yard chip shot. They're going to give you, if they give you a 200-yard chip shot, it's going to be, oh, by the way, it has to be standing. So, if you have a heavy 15-pound rifle, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, if anybody hasn't gone to one of the competitions that is with handgun especially, is that they do that. They do a lot of that stuff intentionally, is to make it, it's not just, move left, move right, take 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. They make everything is off balance, and you got to be shooting around. And so they're trying to make it more, more challenging, like you said, to even with the precision stuff, is that, nothing is going to be static. That's never really going to be the situation. And
Right.
I don't know. I was just, I was thinking is that, back to the point about how it's gained in popularity. And maybe it's just that my attention to it, but it always seemed like it was some of the older guys, because it was, low speed and super high drag, that's why the older guys would go and do it. And now it's, like you said, the demographics, good luck. It's everybody. It's,
Right.
It's men and women, it's young and it's old. It's everybody in between. And I don't know, maybe it's just that I was paying more attention to it with the whole Chris Kyle thing, or maybe it brought my attention to it, or maybe it just brought more people's attention to it. I don't know. It just seems like it's way more popular. Even my pool guy, when I moved into the new house, he walks by and as the second time he came out and cleaned my pool, he said, "Hey," he said, do you do shooting?" And I go, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "'Cause I saw your reloading bench. So, we go out every weekend, and we go out and we do the long range stuff." And the guy knew it was a reloading bench, and I hadn't even put anything on it. You could just tell that that's what it was designed for. But
Right.
it's like anybody is doing it, and you can just have a conversation almost with anybody about it. So, I just thought, maybe, people can go out and experience a little bit and grab somebody that does, because I had a blast when you guys brought that. I guess that was my other thing is the 300 Win Mag, is that the round? Is that the round it used to be? Now it's the Creedmoor, or do they? I mean, what's the? I don't know. What are the top 3 or 4 rounds that people are shooting in the long range stuff?
So it kind of just depends. So in the military, right, it's 308, 300 Win Mag, and then 50 if you're like there to stop an elephant. But in the civilian world, you don't need that much oomph on the round. You're not shooting at people. So that's why the 6.5 does great, because it's more of like a sporterized round. It's just meant to travel fast, long distance, and get on target real fast. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Speed kills, as we learned with the AR, so that's it'll do its job. But as far as that kind of stuff, when it was always in the military world, you're always looking for vehicle penetration, building penetration, whatever your end mission was. So that's really why the 300 Win Mag, the 308 came into it, as well as belt feds and stuff like that. So now in the civilian market, we want to kind of try and stay light, because we're going to move the gun around as fast as we can onto these targets. So that's why they're like, oh, well, let's get something a little bit faster, and try and bring the weight class down so that we can really get out there and zip that round out there, keep a rifle really light, and then, no recoil. So the beautiful thing about the 6.5 is you take a shot and you can watch that round through your scope, hopefully impact correctly or miss. And if you see the miss, then the wind is kicking me left, or the wind is kicking me right, or I have the wrong dope dialed in, and you can instantly go and correct it. With a 308 or a 300 Win Mag, where there's a lot more felt recoil, if you don't have a heavier rifle, you're going to have to be a seasoned shooter to stay behind the glass and follow that round into target.
Gotcha. Okay. So then if you're talking about the difference then in recoil, so is it really then comparing to any like a lever action to an AR, the difference in the recoil, the felt recoil that you have? I mean, is that the comparison going between a 6.5 and a 300 Win Mag?
Yeah, pretty much. Again, it all depends on the gun. If the gun is heavy you're obviously going to take that recoil much better. But again, we're trying to get the guns light so that we can move them in between the stages, inside that stage.
Sure.
So if you're having to swing the gun around, and that's the other thing is they don't give you targets that are right in front of you. Like there's a target at your 10 degrees, there's a target at your 45 degrees, there's a target at your 35 degrees. So you're swinging that gun around. So you have to get underneath behind the glass, find everything. And then again, you start to get fatigued. And that's where those lessons learned on how to set your rifle up, that's where you start seeing gains out of that.
Well, see, and it's kind of, and it makes sense because they have done they went into these Featherlight handguns, right? And they went into these, 38 Featherlights. And so they're a super lightweight framed gun, but the felt recoil is just massive. It's been duplicated because the felt recoil goes into you because you have such a light frame, because you want it to be easy to carry in your purse or in your belt or whatever, because it's lightweight. So I guess it's then the same thing with the Creedmoor. If they would have lightened up a 308 or something, or a 300 Win Mag to make it lighter, then it would have made it harder for you to get your crosshairs back onto the target or keep them there so you could see where you're impacting left, right, high, or low, right? Is that
right,
is that the idea?
That's absolutely the idea. Yep.
Okay. So then where does because I don't know, maybe it was 5-7 years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago, the Lapua, the 338 Lapua, is that something that's out there regularly? I mean, I know the cost, it's ridiculous, but I mean, is that something that is still out there? Are people shooting that, or are they more going away from that because of the cost and size?
Yeah. So I would equate that to, you want to drive a nice sports car. So you're going to try and get a little Corvette, versus a Lambo. So that 338 Lapua, you're going to spend $7 a round. Some of those rounds are literally they're spun on a CNC machine. So you can imagine the costs in that. So that's not it's not a military round. So there's not a lot of surplus for it. So you're going to be paying a heavy, heavy price per that. So you can imagine in a PRS match, you'll shoot anywhere from 50 to 80 rounds. Multiply that by $7 to $10, and it's going to hurt.
Exactly. So to do like the other one, I was thinking, because I have in my gun safe that, oh, wait a minute. I mean, I did lose it. It fell off the boat.
In the boat.
Yeah. It's at the bottom of Lake Mead. I had at one time a 338 Remington Ultra Mag. And and so it's spendy to shoot. And that's why I was just wondering about the Lapua stuff, if that was something, but I assumed it was so cost prohibitive that nobody really shot that. What about like the 7 mags? Is that a round that they use for the precision shooting?
You can, right? So, and of course there's every type of flavor out there. The 7mm was back in the day, same thing, right? It was commercially available back in the day, and it was mostly for the bolt action, but it really was a belted magnum. So that's one of those things where did it come from, and then what did they extract to and from out of them? So it's just one of those things on where did the round come from, and then what was it used for back in the day, and then it was kind of like, oh, well, we're going to tweak it to make it do this, that, and the other. So, Remington is basically the ones that started doing that. And they're like, oh, well, maybe we don't need this. And now we need the, 264 Winchester Magnum. So then they started branching off into all these kinds of different things, and then of course, if the manufacturer doesn't make it anymore, then it starts to become one of those rounds that you just don't get anymore. So like back in the day, that was meant for a little bit less recoil, and it usually less recoil or less heavy of a round, then now you're not getting that much damage to the meat that you're shooting, right? Because if you're designed for hunting and stuff like that.
Sure.
So all of that plays into effect.
So I would think that probably a big, you mentioned it earlier about being able to go buy the 6.5 Creedmoor out on just buying a box of ammo and being good to go. But on the 308 and the 300 stuff, most of the guys are going to be, I assume, are going to be doing reloading, right? I mean, that's got to be kind of where that goes to, where you're picking your formula for your powder bullet mix and, your combination. And that's got to be part of it too, right?
Yeah. So the 308, the reason why usually everyone starts out in that realm is because it's not a barrel burner. So you can shoot, 10,000 rounds out of your 308, and then you'll probably have to replace the barrel. Versus something like a 6.5 or 300 Win Mag, you're talking about 3,000 rounds. And so when you start shooting that, you start keeping a log of how many bullets you fired, when was the last time you cleaned it. All of that stuff starts to play into effect. 308 doesn't care. You just run a brush through it and you're good to go. So, and once you start your reloading, now you can all of a sudden start tweaking your bullets. So now, I want to shoot a subsonic 308 and I want to shoot it, out to 200 yards. I want zero noise. And like the rounds that I've done, those Lapua 200 grain subsonics that I shoot, there is no noise. You're not going to hear a thing. It's just going to hit.
So you have a silencer?
No, I lost that in the boat. Not only do I have a silencer, I made my own silencer on a Form 1 via ATF.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting how it opens up this can of worms about all the ways that you can do it. You can go out because I actually, and I think that this is probably a good segue into another episode and discussion, is that I find the reloading part of it is somewhat therapeutic, I guess. It's the same thing as to an extent, I would imagine, as dialing everything in when you're at the range and trying to, doing the precision shooting. There's a lot of steps that go into it, especially if you're making, 223 rounds. I mean, there's 1,500 steps in order to get that done. And so you have to go through each step, and there's a lot of inspection that goes. I mean, everybody has a different approach to how they do it. I mean, I'm one that if I look at it, probably a piece of brass is probably going to be inspected by me by the time it goes from when I pull it out of the bucket to get started to when I actually make a round. Heck, I've probably touched that thing 6 or 8 times to inspect it, where some people may just go, hey, it's good to go, put it through the tumbler. If it's not split, put it together, So there's some therapy in the reloading side of it. And I would think that that's got to be a huge component for the precision stuff, is like you were saying, where you're picking the bullet combination with powder and how you do everything. And so is that kind of for you, do you go and reload everything, or are you more doing the just buy it off the shelf?
No, I reload everything. I have to have, that's just my personality. I have to have control over every aspect of it. And in that aspect, you learn much about that round that's being built. Just the setback of the bullet itself, whether it's jumping into the landings or whether it's touching the landings. I mean, it's incredible how much there can be in the recipe. And every time you change something, it will affect the round downrange. So it's amazing. You really do have to put a lot of thought into it. And also you have to be careful, right? Because you don't want to mess up when you've got, 80 grains of powder behind a 200 grain bullet, and you're about to punch that primer, and hopefully you've done everything correctly. So it also involves a level of meticulousness that you need to make sure that you're not drinking or watching The View from your TV, because then it's not gonna work.
Whoa, wait a minute. So we're getting some behind the curtains here. So you're watching The View. So does that mean that nothing gets you more relaxed than watching Joy Behar and reloading your 308?
Joe, she's the smartest person walking on this planet.
I know.
She's just above our time. That's why no one can understand her.
I guess that must be what it is. But I think that there's a lot of, because having done a lot of the firearms academies, and we've seen people come in with either factory ammo or, my buddy reloaded this ammo for me. I don't know if you remember the guy that came in, and there was a couple of them. These the two that come to my mind immediately every time is the guy that his buddy reloaded his ammo and the bullet was tumbling and it actually went through the target sideways. And
it's perfect.
And it was like, how did that even happen? And
That's
then
what causes the most damage. Tumbling
I don't know how you got it to tumble horizontally, but whatever. And then the other guy was
inside of 7 yards.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other guy that his stuff, it looked like he was shooting a shotgun because the stuff just shrapneled just coming out of the barrel. I mean, and that's a reason why a lot of the classes say you can't do anything except for factory ammo. One is that you get stuff like that. And then two, you get people that they don't know how to reload and they're jamming. They're always constantly, like I have some 9mm that works really well in my Glock, but it won't work very well in my Beretta. And it's just a small difference in a maybe 0.2 versus 0.5 in the grain that will be able to have it operate properly. And so, and some people come out there and every other round they're having a malfunction of some kind. And so that's why they want factory stuff, because they just don't want to deal with it. But there is a ton of conversation about reloading stuff. I think it would be really a good one for another episode is to talk reloading and just about kind of how you do it. Because I learned, I'm no expert at it. Been doing it long enough now and have made a bunch of mistakes and stuff. But I learned between you and Paul, I learned the majority of the reloading stuff from you guys. So it'd be a good conversation is just to maybe, talk reloading. I'm sure if people are, firing handguns or ARs or whatever, everybody thinks that it makes more sense to reload and it's cheaper. Yeah. Well, I guess spoiler alert, right? Is that no? Yeah. Maybe it seems like it, but the time and the money you got to invest up front, but still, if you like doing that stuff, and like you said, you're a control freak and you like that kind of stuff, I enjoy it. It's a pretty good time. So, well, I think that unless you got something else, maybe that's a good spot to end it and maybe suggest is that if you are listening, we appreciate that you hung in here for about an hour today. We appreciate that you hung in there. If you've got any suggestions, any questions on anything we talked about today, prior episodes, or maybe if you have some questions on reloading specifically, make sure to go to our website, or you can just drop us an email at podcast@latentforce.com. Just put in there if you got a suggestion or a question or whatever, send it to us that way. You can get to our email through the podcast page on our website, which is www.latentforce.com, or when we put up the show on Facebook, you can put it in the comments, anywhere you want to there, and just ask a question, suggest an episode. We'd love to hear from everybody and their suggestions for any of the type of information. So, Mike, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm going to add this because I know that someone will hammer us that a minute of angle or a minute of arc is not technically 1 inch. If you want to do the true math, it's going to be 1.047 inches.
Okay.
Now, doesn't sound important, but when you get way out there, it becomes important.
Okay, so Hard Charger has been satisfied.
Yes.
Now knowing that you've given the
no hate mail.
He's been satisfied now that we've told the actual it kind of like pi isn't actually 3.14, it's 3.14, blah, 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 blah. So, whatever. I don't care. All right. Well, hey, it has been a good time talking about what we did today. If you have any questions on the stuff that we talked about, like I said, just drop us a note. We'll throw some links to the things that we talked about into the show notes so you can look at that stuff. We'll try to keep all that information fresh. But I guess until next time, Mike, and until the next time we figure out something to talk about and that people actually want to listen to, I think actually, did we not decide before we get out of here? I think next time, didn't we decide we were going to talk about something fun? Not that this hasn't been fun, but I thought we were going to talk about whiskey. Wasn't that what we talked about?
Whiskey and cigars.
Didn't you have some homework that you had to do? Did you do it, by the way?
No, I didn't.
It's okay. You can be honest.
I'm building an RV garage. I'm working 2 jobs. My wife is got 10 kids. I'm walking up the hill both ways to my jobs in the snow. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Okay. So I think next time we'll like I said, the new focus of the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action podcast is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So I think that we will still talk firearms, but I think that there's some room to talk about our favorite whiskeys and some things that you may not know about whiskey that we're gonna share in the next episode. So make sure to stick around. But Mike, if you don't have anything else, I'm gonna let everybody go home.
Everyone stay frosty.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
And that'll be a wrap for this episode of the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action podcast. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, or visit our website, www.latentforce.com, so you can get all the latest info from Latent Force. If you have any comments or questions on this episode, or if you have a suggestion for a future show, you can reach us by shooting an email to podcast@latentforce.com. On behalf of Mike Garza and myself, thank you for joining us. Be safe, and as always, stay in the fight.
Peace out.